infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
So on this edition of Into the Fray, I have Kerry Arnold, and he is the host of Bigfoot Odyssey on YouTube. And Kerry, honestly, I got introduced to your show because somebody, one of my Patreons, sent me an episode of your show. And I should have gone and looked up the gentleman's name, but I sat and I listened to the whole thing, and I was pretty riveted. And you'll know once I start speaking about this who it was, or who it is, I should say. But he, bless his heart, he was very emotional about his Bigfoot encounters, and he kept saying, I never curse, I never talk like this. But he, every 3 words he was throwing out some pirate language, which I don't mind personally, but his stories were really, really something else. And like I said, I listened to the whole thing, I was riveted, and that's how I got turned onto your show. So welcome on. And besides maybe if you want to touch on the gentleman that I just brought up, I definitely want to hear the origin story of Bigfoot Odyssey and why you do it.
Yeah, that was the show with Mark Barton. He was actually one of the researchers from the Trail to Bigfoot. The guys down in Florida, him and Chris Connor. That's just the live show we do in between. Bigfoot Odyssey started out making documentaries. We've got about 13 documentaries out there. And that's that's what everyone subscribes to us for normally. We just do the live show to have something in between because there's a lot of time in between, obviously, because we travel all over the country, my wife and I making them. So, yeah, that was one of our more compelling live interviews we did with Mark Barton. He's a lot better now. I'll say that for anyone that knows who I'm talking about. He doesn't go back in the woods anymore, which I can relate to that. But he's much better now, and he just really wanted to get his story out. I felt very honored that he asked us to put it out there for him. And yeah, it was quite a compelling story, a lot to it.
So he's sworn off the woods now because of all that?
He has. So far, he hasn't gone back. Now, he was having some health issues. I don't know how much that had to do with it, but he's in a better place now. I think anyone should do what makes them feel better.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable going back out in the woods, and I don't see how anyone would be after what he experienced, which I think was more personal than anything with him. I don't blame him.
Yeah, and see, those are the stories that I feel guilty. I have not had a Bigfoot encounter. I have some possible auditory experiences, but I didn't see what it made it, these sounds. So I can't say for sure that it was Bigfoot. But those are the kind of things that when I hear that Mark no longer goes out into the woods, and everybody, I will link that episode that we're speaking about in the show notes. Those are the ones that make me feel a little guilty about, I'm constantly just going, I want to see one. I need to see one. I want that confirmation experience. And then you got a guy like Mark going, that was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I can't even begin to tell you how bad it was. And now he never goes in the woods again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can relate. Pretty much the same exact thing happened to me, only I didn't see and experience what he did. Talking about the origins of Bigfoot Odyssey, it goes back a long way. I hunted my entire life till I was from about 5 years old, going out with my dad till I think I was 34 when this happened in 2007, 33. And I had a lease property. I had leased it for 7 years. I hunted it right by myself. A lot of things had happened in my life before I'd gotten this property. I lost a lot of people really close to me in a short period of time, both my parents, 3 of my best friends, all in the same year. I'd become a bitter, not a very good person, I would say. I just didn't really care to be around people very much. So I had pretty much forced myself out into this place. It was just 240 acres. And I had these Sasquatch all around me, but I never knew it. I was suspicious that it was people, that there were people coming out there. I would hear voices. I heard kids playing one day down in the creek bottom. This is out in the woods, not relatively secluded. And the area I was in that day, I went down to the creek bed, and the house, the closest house was probably 700 or 800 yards away up the hill. That's where I figured they had just come down there, played, and I went down there. There was no one there. I always heard knocking, but I felt like, there were houses around, and it's probably just carrying through the woods. What never really registered to me was it wasn't like continuous. It would be 3 or 4 knocks, and then a couple hours later, I would hear more knocking. But it was a pretty constant deal, the knocking. Never put a lot of stock into it. There was one place I would hunt. I would take a Primos can call. It's just a doe bleat. It's a little can. You turn it over and it bit, one of those. It's just a locator, and usually deer will bleat back at it. Well, every time I would get in this tree and do this, it was the bottom of edge of a cutover, bottom of a funnel. It was just an excellent place. The deer just came through there, but it was close to a thicket, and something would just come crashing through the woods. I mean, popping limbs and just making a heck of a racket, which I'm in my mind, it's this big buck. But he would never come out. He would get, 30, 40 yards away and stop every time. And I might have gotten down and gone to look a few times, but it's too thick to go in there and look. So I had all these things going on, and only ever deer hunted in there. I'd attempted to turkey hunt once when I first started, but I wasn't really interested in it. I never saw any signs of turkeys. And so one year, it was December of 2006, getting about the middle of deer season. I'd gone off in the back of the property. It was a creek bottom that went through the whole thing. And I was up a tree in a tree stand waiting for deer. And just about dark, a whole rafter of turkeys get up to roost right beside me, scared the mess out of me. So, light bulb. Now I know where the turkeys are. I can set up and turkey hunt. So I found a spot. It was probably about 200 yards from there, top of a hill, pretty good clearing, half the size of a football field. And if you look at this place like it is a football field, the north and south would be sidelines, east and west end zones. And the south sideline was a drop off. It's like a 2-tier drop off down into this creek bottom. And then the east end zone was just kind of gradually graded off down into that same bottom, just kind of wrapped around there, that southeast end zone corner there. So I'd gone in, finished deer season. It was late February. I think I had gone in there and I burned that place off because turkeys like that. You burn an area and seeds pop and it kills bugs, and it's just, they like to scratch around in that. So that was the plan. I had burned this little area off and got myself prepared. It was a week, 10 days later. It was March the 10th of 2007, and I think it was a weekend. It was a Saturday or a Sunday. I'd gotten in there pretty early, and the road I came in on was just a little 4-wheeler trail. It's up a hill into the west end zone, right in the middle. So I just kind of went to the left. I had cut some gallberry bushes and set them out for me to get behind. Probably 15 feet down, right in the northwest corner of the end zone there. And I could see straight out across from me to the south sideline facing the southeast end zone corner, because that's the direction I figured the turkeys were going to be coming from. So I start calling, and I'm hidden. I'm fully camoed out. I've got a mesh net over my face. I've got black grease paint under my eyes. Turkeys, they're not really smart, but if they ever see you, it's over. Don't even blink. So you have to hide. So I'm there. I've got my gun, Manelli 3.5-inch 12 gauge automatic. I've got high brass number 4 turkey shot. And for some reason I had the plug in. I think I just came with the plug and I never took it out. So I had 3 shots, but I had a pocket full of shells. So I'm sitting there calling. I've got a chirp in my mouth. I've got a box call, and I've got a locator. Well, locator is this thing, you just shake it, and it sounds like a jake or a young turkey gobbling. So if you're sounding like a couple of hens, and then there's a young male around, the big ones are going to come. They're just how it works. So I've called for a couple hours, didn't get any action. And finally, I was hearing other jakes or small, younger turkeys gobbling back. So I'm starting to get excited. Well, a few minutes later, I can see turkeys coming all through the woods. There's this, you look, I'm looking to my left down this north sideline, and there's this game trail. It's wide, it's 3 or 4 feet wide, and I can see turkeys coming up that game trail and all through the woods. I didn't know how many it was at the time, but it was a bunch. So I'm getting excited, and these turkeys are coming, and they get maybe 30 or 40 feet before coming up the hill into the clearing, and they stop, they perked up, and then gone. All of them flew to my left, which was to the north, and I could see it was about 30 turkeys. Once they took off, I could see about how many it was, and I'm upset, aggravated. I didn't think they could see me. They were still a pretty good distance away. Plus, I'm hiding pretty good. And just about the time I couldn't hear them anymore, I could hear what sounded like somebody straight out across from me, about maybe 120, 130 feet down the sideline there, down in the first tier of the creek bottom. Well, I stand up. So I stand up, and I'm kind of leaning over, trying to look through the thicket to see who it is, and I can't see anybody. So I step over about maybe 10 feet to my left. There's a huge loplolly pine tree. It's got really low hanging limbs. And I get in front of it, and now I can see it's a guy. And I can see through the thicket, just about the top of his shoulders up. I can see him, and he's looking at me. And it's a black guy, which made perfect sense. Property I was on belonged to a black family. That's who I leased the property from, a preacher. And his sons and nieces, nephews, daughters all lived on the road up there. And, the property was behind all these houses. It's one of them. So I'm aggravated. I'm watching, and he would look at me and then look back where he was going. And he would look at me and then look back where he was going. So I waved at him, never dawning on me how he knew where I was, because I was that hidden. I'm thinking, this guy has no idea what he's doing. He's lost. He's probably down there and just can't come up. He's walking through the thickest stuff out there. Well, I lost him. But I can still hear him. And I knew he saw me wave at him. So I plopped my back against this pine tree, and I put my right leg up, and I put my gun down to my left, and I put my right hand up over the butt like a boat paddle. This is non-aggressive. I'm not going to shoot at you. Don't shoot at me, position. Well, he's not wearing any orange or anything like that, which you should do if you're walking into a place, no matter what kind of hunting you're doing. But I'm thinking in my head this whole time, this has been my area for 7 years. I've got to deal with the man. If they're going to come out here, at least tell me so these things don't happen. This is what I'm thinking. What am I going to say to this guy? Because I can still hear him. And then the next time I can see him, he had apparently gone. There was a point right there at the southeast corner sideline that he had to have gone around and started coming up, like kind of quarter to me into that corner there. So I can see him now, can see his body, and it looks like he's wearing camouflage, like a camouflage vest. His arms are dark, but it looks like he's wearing something, some kind of overcoat or coveralls maybe, It didn't look right. The whole thing didn't look right at all. This is what made me think this dude has no idea. Well, he's just an amateur. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's scared off my turkeys because they had a direct line of sight to him through the creek bed. He's what scared my turkeys off. So I'm upset. What am I going to say to him? And he gets a little bit closer. And there were two just on the corner. I'd stepped off my shot. It was going to be 72 feet from where I was to the edge of the little clearing. And then about another 10 feet down that grade were two pine trees, about 10-inch pine trees, 25 feet tall, and they were about 3 or 4 feet apart. Well, when he gets probably 10 feet from them, I see him reach his hand out, and I can see he's going to grab this tree. But I can see the skin on the inside of his arm. I can see hair hanging down. Still didn't register that this was anything but a guy, but he's wearing something weird. Looked like about a 400 or 500 pound fat black dude wearing overalls. You know, this thing wasn't all Schwarzeneggered up. You know, it was definitely barrel shaped. Very, very long arms. Forearm was very big, bigger than the bicep appeared to be. And it looked like there was like a division there, like his arm was just stuck on. Hard to explain. Like it was hinged, and you could see, you know, it wasn't. I guess it was so big, there was no continuity from forearm to bicep. So he grabs this tree and he pulls himself up to it, and he puts it right in his chest, on the right side of his chest. And I believe he had his hand on the back of the tree, because I don't remember ever seeing his hand or wrap around it. And when he did that, he squared up. When he stood up and squared up, he looked a lot bigger than I originally thought. I mean, I'm 6'4.5", about 250 at the time, and we were looking almost eye to eye, and he's standing down that grade, probably another foot. So he was probably close to 7 foot tall. Still, there's this point of transition in here when it's really confusing, because I knew what Sasquatch was. I had seen it on In Search Of, and I'm not sure how I felt about it. I don't really remember if I believed it or not. I probably thought it was possible, but wouldn't be surprised if it was all just a bunch of hooey. Either way, it's not around here. You know, that's a Pacific Northwest issue. It's in the mountains. That's where you always see these things on TV. Well, I'm trying to figure out how this guy's doing this. And we're talking about just a few seconds here. You know, I'm kind of back and forth between this being a dude and being something else. Well, he opened his mouth, and when he did that, I could see his mouth was massive, and he started making the most unnerving sound I'd ever heard in my life, and I haven't heard anything like it. Pretty close, I've heard some things, but not like this. It's like multiple sets of vocal cords, and it sounded kind of Native American, I guess. Like it was a language, like there was form and syntax to this. He was talking, essentially. Well, when he did that, I believe that was the point where I thought there's no doubt this is a Sasquatch. This is what everyone has been seeing in the woods and reporting. And you have to understand the level of disbelief is really high. But you know, that became suspended obviously when he did that. So he is essentially giving me the business. He's pissed off. He's very, very upset. So I'm still in this position. I've got my hand up on the butt of the gun. Well, I'm mortified. I'm absolutely terrified. I'm a half a mile in from my four-wheeler where I parked. Walked down this road. It's 800 yards. We measured it. So I'm a long way from, you know, getting to my four-wheeler and getting out of there. So I just want to get my hand down on the grip of my gun. And when I moved my hand, that's when he really got upset. And he rocked back and forth a couple of times, and he blew at me. It wasn't a yell. It was more like a huff, but not really. Like he was saying no really loud, like, oh, like, no, you're not putting your hand on that gun. Well, when he did that, I felt it. I mean, this guy's 80 feet away. I can see his teeth. I can see everything except his legs, where the grass came up. He's standing in a gap about 3 or 4 feet wide, and there's grass up in front of him. He's standing down that grade, but I can see everything else clearly. And what I thought was camouflage looked like mud. Like he had been laying down and rolling in the mud, and it was grass, and just the hair was matted up. I could see his skin, his lighter gray skin. His face was black. His skin on the inside of his arm and under his hair was lighter a little bit, like really dark gray. So when he did that, I felt it, and it jarred me, like startled me. And I guess that was enough for me to move, because I took about 5 steps to my right, out into the clearing, still facing him. And he's still rocking back and forth, like really fast. Now I'm out from under the limbs of this tree I'm up under, and I can see and hear this tree he's holding on to, and it's whipping. I mean, 4 grown men could not do to this tree what he was doing to it. And it still bothers me. I think that was probably one of the more terrifying moments, was seeing that power, feeling that and seeing that power of this thing being angry towards me. And I just knew that he was going to come at me. So I think at this point, I'm thinking, where am I going to shoot it? Because, I mean, highbrows number 4 turkey shots, really not anything to sneeze at. I could probably kill him, but I think he still may get me. He may die later sometime. So this is kind of what's going through my head, is how in the world am I going to make it out of here? Well, just a few seconds, he stopped doing that. He rolled his lips back, showed all of his teeth. He had a Michael Strahan gap right in his 2 front teeth, and stuck his tongue out, straight out. Not at me, just like he was just tasting the air. And that was kind of scary moment too. Went back to making his grunting vocalizations just for a few more seconds. He stopped. He kind of turned his body to the right. It was kind of a slick motion. He pulls his hand down, turns his body to the right, but he kept his eyes on me. He didn't turn his head like a normal person would. He cocked his head to the right, like a dog when you whistle at them weird and they cock their head to the right. And he looked right down his nose, across his shoulder at me, never took his eyes off me. And he took maybe 3 or 4 steps into that thicket, and I couldn't see him anymore, but I could still hear him. And I'm standing out in the middle of this opening clearing, and I keep looking to my left. Something keeps telling me I need to be looking to my left for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it was still close to some thick stuff there. Everything else is open, but that I just kept looking just to make sure nothing. I felt like I was going to get ambushed. So I can still hear him. I'm still standing there, just totally in complete shock. And he gets down, I think, probably into the bottom. He's pretty good distance off, maybe another 50 or 60 yards. Excuse me, down into that bottom. And that's when he yelled. And it wasn't the old Finding Bigfoot, whoa. It wasn't like that. It was like a baboon. That was the closest thing I could compare it to, was a baboon. It's like a buildup. It's just, wow. And that was loud. That was so loud that when he did that, everything was quiet. And I can vividly remember. I remember how tall the grass was. I remember the breeze was blowing just a little bit. And after that, I didn't hear another thing. I still stood there for a couple of minutes. And I think that's probably why he yelled, is because I wasn't leaving. Well, eventually, maybe after a minute or so, I start to realize that I'm breathing. I can actually feel myself breathing and feel my heart beating. I wasn't breathing fast. I was breathing long and deep, like I'd just run a mile. and my heart's pounding out of my chest. And I turned around and I walked over, picked up my backpack. I left everything else laying there, chair, calls, whatever I was eating it probably stayed there for years. I don't know. I put my backpack on and I started to walk out, and I stopped, and I was going to take the plug out and put 2 more in, but I didn't want to get caught in that position. So I just took 3 out of my pocket and held them in my left hand and walked out. I didn't want to run, but I was taking like really short, quick steps, and I would go probably 40, 50 feet and stop and listen. I would go another 50 feet, stop and listen all the way out. Well, at the end of the road curves and goes up a hill, and then about 200 feet away is my 4-wheeler. When I'd come in, usually I would either park there or I would drive in, just depending on what I was doing. Well, that day I'd parked in the front. So I made it to the hill, and everything's starting to open up, and I can see houses. I'm starting to feel a lot better about getting out. And I get to the top of the hill, and I can see my 4-wheeler, a view of heaven from a seat in hell is what I describe it as. I'm feeling good. So I stop and I turned around, and I think before I could get really good and turned around, I heard that very distinctive sound of a tree break. And it was a fresh one because it's that crackle pop, that crack, pow, like a rifle shot. That's when I ran. I ran to my 4-wheeler, and I just knew that whatever that was behind me. And I think the worst part of the whole thing was getting on my 4-wheeler because I had parked it up against a thicket. I could not go forward. I had to back up toward whatever this was to get out. And I just knew I made it this far, and now I'm going to have to back up, and he's just going to drag me off, and that's going to be it. But he didn't. I never saw anything else after that. I drove up to the house. I pushed my 4-wheeler up beside the house, which I normally loaded up in my truck. I got in my truck. I reached in the back. I grabbed my 7mm Magnum, made sure it was loaded, locked all the doors, rolled the windows up. I guess they were already up. And I sat there for a while, maybe 30, 45 minutes. I don't know how long. But I sat there watching that back tree line and just completely mortified, freaked out, really, is what I was. It was so hard to believe. And I might have been, even days after, trying to convince myself that this had to be something else. And I tried to look into the whole subject and try to find something. We're talking about 2007. There wasn't a lot of good stuff out there. And I didn't really find much. I never told anyone what it was because I couldn't find anything to confirm what it was. So I just kind of kept it to myself for almost 8 years, 9 years. I never went back in the woods again. I sold all my stuff. I never hunted after that. I didn't go outside at night for a long time, but it kind of changed the way I had to change everything. It was either change everything or completely lose my mind trying to figure this out. I was no way I was going to be able to ever hunt again. That's what I felt anyway. And I guess I became a lot more outgoing and open toward people, and I guess I was trying to be someone that this didn't happen to. Essentially, that's the best way I can put it. Is I still looked into it, but I became a much better person. I think after the fact, I think I treated people a lot better, and I think I cared a little bit more. Essentially, became somebody else. So that's what happened. And I would say it was about 2016, and I was doing good. It was well behind me. I was watching YouTube, and I looked over at the Bigfoot stuff, and this channel came up called Crypto Reality. Mark and Melanie Zaski down in Florida. And he was posting clear pictures of exactly what I had seen. And it just kind of invigorated me in a way. But what happened was it started causing some anxiety and some panic attacks, and I would have nightmares. This went on for months. And So I got in contact with him. My wife essentially told me, my wife is a nurse, an RN, said that I was just going to have to, if I'm going to get over this, I've either got to do therapy or I've got to confront it. And so that's what I did. I called him. I was going to go down. I was going to be a researcher, and I was going to become a part of crypto reality and do this with them. So I got in contact with him. He said, come on down. I told him my whole story. And so I went down. I went out with them for a couple of months and realized I just couldn't do it. I didn't want to be around them. I really didn't want to have much to do with them other than maybe getting some kind of validation for myself, to be vindicated, I guess, in a sense. So that wasn't working. So she said, okay, well, why don't you just interview people? Just talk to people about it that have had other sightings. So I said, okay, well, if we're going to do this, well, I'm not going to halfway do it. So we came up with an idea for a show that we could get out of the house and travel and make these documentaries. So we called it Bigfoot Odyssey, that people that were having multiple long time experiences, an Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey is a journey dotted with notable experiences. So we called it Bigfoot Odyssey. So we have these people are telling us their Bigfoot Odyssey and what they've gone through the years, all their sightings, all of their evidence and their story. So that's what we did. And we put it together, and it's worked for me. That's worked. Now, that was 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And then for the last little over a year, we've been doing the live show just because I had so many people contacting me, and there was no way I could travel and do all these shows. So I would get these people that just had singular accounts to come on and talk about their experience. So that's pretty much that's where we came from. That's the whole genesis, and here we are now.
Holy smokes. So yeah. I purposely did not go through and hear you tell this story anywhere else. I'd like to, come at it with holy cow. I was not really quite expecting that. Got a lot of questions, of course. Was this in Mississippi, Kerry, your experience?
It was in Collins, Mississippi. I was off of the place it was between Collins and Prentice off Highway 84. It's a place called Dan Easterling Road. It was about 3 miles back in there where it was. Perfect habitat for everything. There was so many deer in there, and fox and bobcat and rabbits, and just, it was the lay of the land, I think, had a lot to do with it. But where it was right in the middle of 5 chicken houses. Almost any direction you point was a chicken house. And when we'd gone back and talked to some of the people around there, there was one man that kept losing chickens and really noticed it, losing 30 or 40 at a time. But there was never a scene like blood and feathers or anything like that. So he was thinking fox or coyote or whatever. He sets this bear trap by the door, and he put it in the ground with a 3-foot piece of rebar. And I think it was a couple of days later, he baited it with a chicken. A couple of days later, comes back, and the whole thing's pulled out of the ground and gone. So I couldn't convince him that it was Sasquatch. He didn't believe in any of that stuff, and I don't really blame him. I guarantee you, if anyone would have told me that things were going on around me were Sasquatch before I saw it, I probably would have laughed. I was just that full of myself and arrogant and just sure that I knew everything that was in these woods. No one knows more than me what's in these woods. You're going to tell me that it's this goofy thing? No. And until I saw it.
I bet when the 3-foot piece of rebar went missing and you're down there looking at him, you probably just in your mind were seeing your Bigfoot, for lack of a better term, flipping around your tree, right?
10 years later.
Yeah. You're like, oh, believe me, I know what did this. No problem. It was no problem for this thing. You mentioned that at some point before you saw this thing, you heard kids playing. Can you go into more detail, what that sounded like to you?
Yeah, I was in my shooting house this time, and I had a long field that was plowed and I'd planted ryegrass, uh, a good 70 yards to the end, and then it just kind of sloped down into the creek bed. About 200 yards away was the creek, and that's where I heard them. They were down there, and it was just like kids playing and yelling at each other, rah, 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 high pitched.
Mm.
So I thought it was kids. So I can't shoot that way now. So I can get out, and it's early. It's 3:30 in the afternoon. So I get down, and I'm going to walk down there and tell them get their butt back up to the house or wherever they came from. And I got down there, and there was no one there. I didn't even hear kids playing up at the house now. And come to find out, many years later, there were no really young kids around there at that time. It was a 12-year-old girl. It was the youngest around there. So it was them. There's no doubt of it was them. I was camping there one night because I lived about 45 minutes away, and I was out there so much during deer season. I would hunt till dark. Instead of going home and coming back, I would just stay in my truck. I'd build a fire, I'd sleep, and then before daylight, I'd go out and hunt. So I'm sitting out there. It's probably 10 o'clock at night. Got me a little fire going, and I hear an owl, but it doesn't sound like an owl. It sounds like a guy trying to sound like an owl. Well, only one person really knew where I was, and that was the man's grandson who had got me in touch with him to begin with. It was the guy that I worked with. So I thought, man, it was my mind, it's him, and he's out there trying to mess with me. So I yelled at him. I can't remember exactly what it was, something to the effect of, okay, I hear you. You can come on out now. I know that's you. But no one ever came out. And I mean, it was blatantly obvious that it was not, it was breathy,
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely tell, owls have that little trill at the end of there when they actually hoot. So that was another moment. There were so many. I could be sitting in my shooting house, and I would hear the talking sometimes. I would hear something thump the ground, like hard, like shake the ground, boom, like really hard, like a couple times. And wow, there must be a rabbit sitting on a stump, and that's what's making it. These are how you rationalize things. This is the most ridiculous part about it is if I would have been aware, I would have known a long time before, but I was totally and completely oblivious. And that's the main reason that we do what we do, just so people can be aware. You don't have to believe. I don't care if you believe. Just consider it as a possibility when you're out there and you hear that knock, you hear that scream, you hear something strange in the bushes. Just prepare yourself that it could be one of these things, and you may not have to go through what I went through if you happen to see it.
What's your conjecture on what the loud thumping sound might be, in relation to Bigfoot?
Heard so many things. Slapping the ground, stomping on the ground. I really don't know. It's got to be some form of communication, I would think, in some way that they were communicating back and forth with each other. I'm sure they did it a lot. Strange whistles I would hear. They were throwing things at me one day. Decided I was going to cut through and hunt the field. Well, instead of walking all the way around, I just cut through the pines. Well, I never did that. So I'm cutting through, and I'm walking, and I hear something come off the tree and hit the ground. I didn't see what it was, but I knew something. So I'm looking up all around, and I didn't see anything. I took a few more steps. Something else hits the ground. Okay. To me, it's a red squirrel with butterfingers. He's up there somewhere, and, red squirrels are slick. They'll get on the other side of the tree from you, so you can't see them. And that happened probably 6 or 7 times through that whole, 200-yard walk. Something would hit the ground. I just thought it was strange. He's just following me. I've been paralleled in there. Thinking a deer is paralleling me because I would put doe and heat on my boots and walk in to cover my scent. I get to the bottom of this hill, and I can hear whatever it is just inside the woods, inside the thicket, walking with me. And I would stop, and it would stop. I would carry on, and it would carry on. So there was a fire lane dug there, and I went around and I laid down in the fire lane on the other side of this hill and waited and waited and waited. And I could hear something tapping, like really lightly tapping. So I reach up and tap on the barrel of my rifle, with my watch or something. I'd tap, and it would tap. In my head, it's a buck. And it just sounds so ridiculous now thinking about how completely and totally unaware I was of these creatures. I never saw a footprint. I never saw eye shine or anything that I would, any kind of tree structure that I would say was out of place. But I wasn't looking for those things really. I wasn't, if I saw something like that, I'd probably think it was just deadfall. This is the problem I think with that most people have, especially hunters. And I get lambasted by hunters. Oh, I've been hunting my whole life. There ain't nothing like that out there. And same thing happened to me. But think about how people hunt these days. They park their truck in the same place. They walk in the same way. They go to the same shooting house. They go to the same stand. We're pretty easily patterned and not that graceful going through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that wants to hide from you, and these creatures do appear to be predisposed to it, they're just you're just not going to know they're there. They're just going to stay away and watch you from the thickest stuff out there through one little hole. They're probably watching you embedded in the environment.
Yeah, they're like ninjas. They're like the woods ninjas.
It's incredible.
They're amazing. Like that, I do feel like maybe there was one close to me at some point in one of these locations I've been to. I would never know. Over this 7-year period, were you the only one that was going out there and hunting this property?
Yes. I had a deal because none of those. These were urbanites in a rural setting. They never hunted it. It was so grown up and thick and unkept. And I did as much, whatever I wanted to do to it, they let me. Because I would take half of what I killed, I would get it processed and take them half of it, of everything I took. That was kind of the deal that we had. He didn't want it. I just offered it to him. He just said, yeah, have at it. No one ever goes back there. And they didn't. They just weren't that type of people to go hunting. And he said something to me one day that really, that I remembered looking back on. They had no animals, no dog, no cat, no chickens or anything like that. And I mentioned that to him, and he said, yeah, old dog come up every now and then, but they don't ever stay. And I'm thinking, you feed a country dog, he's not going anywhere. He's home. So I think they were getting got, essentially, which I know is not a happy thought, but I do think that's what happened.
Yeah, if you lose a few dogs, especially if maybe you actually find them after the Bigfoot does, it's probably a lesson quickly learned that you're just not going to keep replacing them.
Yeah, I think he knew something. When I went back and talked to the Daniel, because his father died and he owned the place now, and he remembered me coming out there after 11 years. And I sat down and talked to him. And he told me, he said, yeah, we hear knocking all the time. 11 o'clock at night, we'll hear it. And we'll hear screams. And I'd already been back in there again at that point. And I'm glad I didn't talk to him first, because I might not have gone back there again. I had to go twice, actually, because we shot an episode of it and filmed the whole thing where it was. It's in our documentary series. It's our 5th episode.
Yeah, so if you had heard that, you still have knocks. Yeah, I'm not going back out there. Yeah, I'm sure it was good to hear that afterward. Oh my gosh, Kerry. Okay. How often did you go out there during? I mean, I know that deer season is, it's a certain time of the year, but I mean, you were pretty regular with your visits when it was deer season. You were out there.
300 plus days a year. I can hardly remember a day when I didn't go. Something would have to be going on somewhere else for me not to go out there. And essentially, then, like I said, I normally wouldn't have done that, but I was just kind of feeling sorry for myself and just getting away from people. And you just gotta have to understand, when you lose both your parents, or grandparents, the 3 best friends I ever had, we all had the same tattoo. These people all died in the same year. And these guys were 26 years old when they died. My parents were relatively young, 59 and 62. They died 2 months apart. And my boss was the first one to pass away. A guy that worked opposite me, his wife ran over him. So in a 10-month period,
Oh,
I made
God.
9 funerals, and it just kind of, I don't know, maybe I wasn't able to get past one before the next one hit. It just seemed like, I don't know, maybe I'm next and I just need to get away and
Right.
just go let it happen. So I put myself out in the woods and I was there. And I think that had everything to do with what happened to me. I think if they had not known who I was, had known at my every notion and tendency and watched me for so long, if I had just gone out there and for the first time and turkey hunted, I think everything probably would have been okay. But because it was me, because I was doing something different, now I'm hunting past deer season. Now I've got a different animal I'm hunting. And I think maybe it had been the number of turkeys that were coming. I don't know why they did it. That's the only thing that I can wrap my head around, is to a reason that he would just blatantly show himself. And for a long time, I felt like it was my gun that saved me, because he knew what that was, without a doubt. When I made a gesture to put my hand on the grip is when he really got upset. And it's a different gun than I normally have. I always have my rifle. If I would have had my rifle, Shannon, I would have shot him. I'd have shot him right between the eyes. There's not a doubt in my mind. So it's probably a good thing that I didn't have that. And maybe they knew that. I don't know. There was a reason for it, and it was to complain at me about something. I think they had tried to run me out of there before. I was just too stupid to realize what was going on. But that day, and maybe it was me waving at him, when I first saw him. I wonder what he thought about that. Like, hey, how you doing? I think maybe they thought I knew they were there anyway, just from the interactions we had over the years. Me yelling at whoever's talking, I'm hunting in here. You need to get out of here. Things like that. So I think that's the whole reason it happened. If he wanted to get me, he'd have snuck up on me and got me. He was being slick now. He was slipping. I think that's why he was walking the way he was, because he was slipping through there. But he wanted me to know he was there and that they were very upset with me. There's no doubt about that. And they ushered me on out. When I got to the top of that hill and stopped, when I turned around, that limb popped. So I know I don't know if it was him or another one that was there. And it was a good 75 yards, 80 yards away when I heard it through the thicket. How whoever or whatever saw me, I don't know, unless they were up a tree, which is probably a good possibility. And then when I ran to my four-wheeler and got on, I just knew it was right behind me. And it messed me up for so long, not going back out hunting. And I could easily justify my change in behavior because of everything else that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it ended up destroying my marriage because I'd essentially become a different person. My wife didn't marry this person. She married the other guy. So it made a lot of changes in my life, essentially. And here I am, knee deep in it.
You mentioned him coming into the clearing, and you're kind of going, dude, what the heck did you do that for? But you did mention before that you kept looking off to your left, that you just had this feeling that there was something over there that just maybe wasn't good, or maybe very similar to the massive creature that you were looking at, the monster.
Yeah, well, I don't really know. I guess it was just because I was so close to something else thick, just making sure maybe there was nothing else trying to come up on me, like he's distracting me, like this thing's going to get me. Because to my right, I'm out in this middle of this cleared area, and it's all cleared out in front of me to my right. And I kind of have my back to that. So that's what I was kind of turning and looking over there and still, trying to watch him while he was walking away. It didn't take long for him to disappear, I can tell you that. And he didn't come out into the open. He was still in the woods. He was on the edge of that clearing. He was 80 feet away from me. 80 feet. And I could see everything. He looked like Scottie Pippen. And people laugh at me when I say that. But it was that long face, really pronounced cheeks and brow, and obviously deep set eyes, like he had wrap-around sunglasses on. His face was really black, like patent leather shoes, shiny black. Huge mouth, gap in his front teeth, had long canines on top and bottom, not super long, but longer than the others, and his teeth were really white. And I think he was young, just kind of the impression that I got, that he was probably a younger one, because he wasn't humongous. You know, he was big enough, about like Big Show, the wrestler, built just like that.
Mm.
That's how he was built, barrel shaped, as straight up and down from the shoulders to hips, same size but big. So I thought it was when he was coming up through the thicket. That's why I thought it was a fat dude. Like he's just got on some coveralls and he's lumbering. He's tired and has no clue what he's doing. Yeah, he knew what he was doing.
With the tree popping, once you almost got to the four-wheeler, which by the way, that part is bothersome to me because, you know, once you make the decision to run, I mean, you were already so terrified and then you just are like, okay, balls to the wall, time to run. Let's just do this. Yeah. I got to get the hell out of here. That's a horrible part to that story. Because, you know, I kind of try to put myself there. I'm going, that's the point where it's basically do or die. Like you really felt like you were in mortal danger.
Oh, I felt like that a long time before then. And I was doing some serious foxhole praying. And I was making some promises to God that I've kept to this day. When I was standing there, I knew that he wanted to kill me. So this thing wants to kill me. These are probably my last moments. And maybe it wasn't so much dying, but no one is ever going to know what happened to me. I'm going to disappear. That was I think that's what got to me more than anything, that people see these things all the time. They just don't live to tell about it. They have to. I'm seeing it. Other people have to see it this way. That's what got me. And that effect, it had such a profound effect on me. I could not go back in the woods. I didn't go back in any woods for 10 years. And that was down in Florida, which looks nothing like the Mississippi woods.
Right.
But when I did go back to film in the Mississippi woods with M.K. Davis and M-Best, I was not good. I wasn't good. My stomach was just in knots. And I didn't feel like anything was going to get me. It was just the way my body was reacting. And I had talked to an emotional freedoms techniques coach that told me, that said, that's exactly what's happening. It's not you. Your body is reacting like it's happening now. And I can think about it hard enough. I've told it enough. I can spit it out pretty good. I think one of the last times I told it, I got pretty nervous and upset. But this time was just like most of the other times. I can get it out and I'm okay. But if I really sit and think about it, which is what she made me do,
mm-hmm.
I can force that feeling on me. And when I close my eyes and see that face, it's not 80 feet away. It's right there. And it just kind of, it shocks me kind of every time when I do that. And I've done my best to try to get over it and go back. I've got no reason to hunt. And I'll give you the really bad analogy that I give everyone else. It's like putting a 2x6 on the ground and walking across it. You can walk across it pretty easy. Now raise it 100 feet in the air. It's the same 2x6. But what are you thinking now? Don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall. That's me going in the woods. Nothing's changed except my perception. I have to look behind every bush because one could be there. That's just what, it's probably not, but that's just what I'm telling myself. And that's how much it affected me and what it forced us into pretty much, thank God for Linda Arnold. She's the one that started all this and pretty much made me do it. Because she'd wake me up. Who are you yelling at? I'm like, I don't know. Was I yelling? She's like, yeah, you were screaming. And just these bad nightmares. I would have this recurring nightmare. It was never what happened to me, but it was always the same situation, that I'm driving down this narrow road and it's so narrow and through the woods that limbs are hitting either side of the vehicle. And I'm going to camp I got friends, they're camping. I can see the fire, but I can't drive all the way to it. They're at the fire. I can see them. They're 50 yards away, but I got to stop and I got to get out. And when I get out and start to walk in, that's when he's bearing down on me. And I always wake up, I guess, at the point where I don't ever see what it is, but in my mind, it's this creature and I'm not going to make it to them. He's going to get me. And I always wake up. That's probably happened maybe 5 or 6 times. I've had others with different situations. I was in a basement, I think, and one was trying to get through the little basement window at me. So, but it's always one of these lucid dream situations where when it starts to happen, I'm dreaming. I think I'm dreaming, and then but I still go through the whole thing and end up waking up somewhere where I thought I was in my dream, but actually not. I was at home. So there's been a lot of effects it's had on me. I've done my best to turn it into something positive, because you can sit and feel sorry for yourself the rest of your life. And that's essentially what I had done until I just didn't think about it much, until I saw those images that Mark Zaske put out, and it just brought all these things back.
Have you ever been able to sleep overnight in the woods since then?
No, haven't even tried.
Don't blame you. You know the monster is real. Especially, okay, I got to touch on this. Everyone will yell at me if I don't. The whole lip flip, we've heard of that before, right? And they show their teeth. It's interesting how you said it had like the gap in between the front teeth. Yeah. The tongue sticking out is a really interesting aspect. Is that what you think it was doing? Is aiding in its senses? It's smelling and tasting things, or what do you think that was?
I've heard so many people tell me they knew exactly what it was. It was a sign of dominance. That just what it looked like he was doing, just tasting the air, because it wasn't like he was pointing his tongue at me. It was just out, not directly at me. He was standing quarter to me with his head turned, looking at me. And I've heard all these things. I have no idea. I really don't know anything about Sasquatch. In 14 years, I have learned very little other than that they exist. I really don't care, to be honest with you. I don't care what they are. I don't care what they do, their behavior. We talk about these things, but it's all just a bunch of conjecture, And I hear these experts they talk like they've lived among them. And that aggravates me.
Thank you. Bit. Amen. I say that all the time. I'm like, how in the hell are there Bigfoot experts? How?
I just don't know. I've heard them say, well, Bigfoot will come down from the lower levels at dark, and they'll hunt about a mile apart from each other. I'm like, how in the world? How could you know that? Come on.
Right.
So, you listen to these guys, and I understand it. They want people to think that they're this great white hunter expert, and I get it. But I don't think they realize how stupid they sound. So
I know. That's the sad part. It's the sad part. You know what it is, Kerry? It's the Dances with Wolves situation. They're Kevin Costner, and they've infiltrated the tribe, and now they're learning everything they need to know about them to share with us.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
I'm really glad that you said that. I say that a lot too. Golly, Bigfoot experts.
Yeah. Leaves me very limited. I actually pay attention to.
Yeah. So you said that this location, you talking about it's on the 5th episode of this Bigfoot Odyssey doc. Now, what about Mark Zaske? Where has he been? I haven't talked to him since I first got on Sasquatch Chronicles ages ago and all that stuff. And where can one see this photograph that you say looks like your Biggie? Is that still online somewhere?
It's in the documentary, actually. The really good one that I put in there was taken by Albert Burlingame. Looked exactly like what I saw, and it's around the 38-minute mark. I showed the classic one standing in the river looking up, because that's kind of the body style, except the hair wasn't that thick. The one they claim is a hoax, and it probably is. They said it was a small figure that somebody made.
Oh, the one that's looking up.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know which one.
It's that body style. It was the comparison I was making. But the picture, the image he took was a still frame from video. And it was absolutely incredible. And you can see this thing leaning out from behind this tree looking at him, but that face and that apex and just it just looked exactly, no hair on its face, just looked exactly like what I'd seen. So I put it in the doc. So just to give people an idea of what it was I'd actually seen that day.
Can I link these docs? Are they online, or is this kind of a buy DVD situation?
No, if you go to our channel, Bigfoot Odyssey, and go to playlists, you'll see our first 11 documentaries are there, and then it's split up that we've got late shows. We do Christmas, 12 Days of Christmas, Halloween special that we've done. All those things are separated in there, and you can find everything in our playlists on the channel. But you were asking about Mark Zaschke. He's him and Melanie are still going. They left YouTube a few years ago just because they didn't like the way they were being treated. So they left there and went to Patreon. So for $1.99 a month, Crypto Reality is available, and they still get those epic images.
That's awesome. Yeah, gosh, I haven't talked to Mark in ages and ages.
He hasn't changed.
What's that?
He's still Mark Zaschke.
Yeah.
Still that guy. Good dude.
Right. Who would want him to change? You know, he is an awesome, unique human being. He's a very passionate man. Do you wish that you never would have seen that thing?
I think sometimes I do, but it's made me who I am now. You know, I don't really have any regrets. There are a lot of things I could have done that I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now if I had. So I kind of try to look at it that way, that there's a reason this happened, and maybe I was supposed to do this. And this was the only way I would ever do anything like this, was if something like that happened to me. If I would just saw it at a distance, maybe walking through the woods or whatever, it would have given me too much to doubt. The way this happened, there's absolutely no doubt. There's nothing I can do to make it ever go away. It's always, when I think about it a certain way, it's always going to affect me like it does. And it happened. It happened that way. That's the way I remember it happening. There might be some small detail that maybe I've forgotten over the years or maybe wanted to forget, but that's the way I remember it happening. And I would have never done what we're doing now if it hadn't happened that way. So I kind of look at it as like I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah, I guess he kind of forced you to break out of, that horrible funk you were in after that terrible year. That's a lot of people to lose, and I'm sorry to hear that, by the way.
Yeah, it was crazy, strange events, what I would call extraordinary events that put me in the woods, and it was an extraordinary event that pushed me out.
Another little detail here I want to talk to you about is the idea of you said the multiple vocal cords is what it sounded like. So when you're going back and you're hearing those quote unquote children playing, do you think that was just one Bigfoot making all that racket? Do you think that one, again, just conjecture, do you think that one creature could make a sound that would sound like multiple human beings or multiple whatevers if they wanted to?
I think they're very talented when it comes to mimicking, except for the day he tried to mimic the owl. He wasn't very good.
He wasn't trying too hard, no.
No. And again, it might have just been trying to elicit a response from me. But that day, it sounded like a two, or maybe two or three. At least two were down there. Could have been one, but it just made more sense to me that it might have been a couple back and forth at each other, because that's what it sounded like. That they were just kind of fighting, playing is what I thought was going on. Yelling, kids yell and scream when they're playing and running and laughing, and it's just kind of what it sounded like. It was high pitched though. This guy had a very. I know you've heard the Sierra sounds. I know you have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a part in there where there's two of them, and it sounds like they're griping at each other, and it's very abrupt. Like that. That tone, that is what he sounded like. It was so bothersome, and it just make your skin crawl just to hear it. But it wasn't that abrupt. He was talking, and he would get loud, and then mumble, like he was saying words, but it was in that tone, that creepy. It was powerful. And that's the thing, Shannon. This is the thing that gets you, that would get anyone, is the power. When you get a sense of the kind of power we're talking about, this tree shaking, this huff that he did at me, and I could feel like standing in front of a big speaker. It shook my spine. It jarred me. It probably got me out of my frozen space and made me able to move. It's kind of the way I look at it. But I would say to anybody, and I'll tell you this too, you want to see one so bad, be careful what you wish for, because the way you see it can have a serious, profound effect on you. So really think about how you want this to happen. Would you want to be take Bigfoot out and put a Bengal tiger in its place? Would you want to be 80 feet from a Bengal tiger that was looking at you, licking his lips?
Right.
Same feeling, same thing.
What's striking about your experience is the fact that there are so many different variables that for me to ask you, well, what was the absolute worst part of it? Well, hell, it's all really bad, if you ask me. The tree shake and the lip flip and the tongue sticking out was really random and creeped me out. And him speaking, whatever the hell he was saying to you, who knows? It's all just a big bag. Honestly, yours is a big bag of nope. I didn't know all the details. I didn't know any of the details. But now that I've heard it, I completely understand your reaction to take my guns, take my camo. I don't need any of this crap. I'm never going in the woods again.
Never heard anyone that's heard it say anything different.
Yeah. Because that is exactly the reaction everybody should have. That's a no. How about missing people? We've talked about the gentleman the family that owned that property that you hunted on. They said, no, we don't keep any dogs around here. We know that they either find them annoying or they are opportunistic and they take dogs sometimes for, food maybe. What about people? Do you think that could be something going on out there in the woods if they get hungry enough or bored enough or whatever?
Absolutely. But I also think that these creatures are emotionally intelligent, self-aware. And when I say self-aware, I mean, if you were to put a mirror out there and they were to see themselves, I think they would know it was them. You can do that to a cat or a dog and they think it's another dog. I think they're self-aware to the point that they're aware that they leave sign behind. And I think they do things to take away their presence, their signature as much as possible, hiding tracks, possibly, jump over a clear spot or whatever they do. But I think, yes, that they would absolutely take a child. I think they've done it before, but I think it has to be exact right circumstances because they don't want to be seen doing it. That's just how I feel. And, we hear and the reason I come to these conclusions about them, being predisposed to hiding. And I mean, it's almost obvious to me because they do exist. There have to be answers to these questions. Why don't we run into them? Why don't we find their bodies? Well, for me, I don't have the luxury of falling back on, well, they just don't exist. I know they do. So there has to be a viable answer to the question, why don't we run into their bodies? And I think it's all in their behavior and who they are as a species, being predisposed to hiding, not something that's taught, something that's born in them, a survival tactic, hiding and not being discovered. They're not going to leave one of their dead around for us to find. It's a giveaway for them. They're busted at that point. So I think they do something with their dead. It's almost obvious to me. Why don't we get good images and pictures of them? Because they're just slick, just how they are. They've got every advantage over us in their environment. And, rightfully so. They live there. We don't. We visit.
We're such just bumbling, hairless pink creatures in the woods, and we're noisy and smelly, and we do our best to leave no traces behind. But yeah, it's a lot of work because we're not built for that. Not anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, I haven't said this in a long time. They're like the Liam Neesons of the woods. Even though later on we found out that Liam Neeson hates guns. I'm like, wait, what? Hold on a second. You're anti-gun, homie? What are you talking about? Anyway, but Liam from the movies, that's what they remind me of. All right, let's go through this again where everybody can find the doc and the YouTube series and anything else that you wanted to plug.
Bigfoot Odyssey. You can email me at bigfootodyssey@gmail.com. You can check out our website, bigfootodyssey.us. Our YouTube channel, obviously, is Bigfoot Odyssey. You can go to our playlists, find all our documentaries, our travel shows. Our live show is what it is. It's, to me, I can say it's working without a net because it's live. and we get a decent crowd in there. We'll get 500 or 600 people in live, and they're having a good time. So it's a good place to come and talk to other people in a safe space. So, we just kind of do what you do. Essentially, we talk to eyewitnesses, and we have a show on Wednesday. It's called a Researcher's Report, where we have researchers come on and talk about their areas and their evidence. And it's all just one big spinning wheel of redundancy, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
know that feeling.
Years,
yeah.
Patterson Gimlin film. That's essentially what we've done, is spin our wheels.
Yeah.
Finding and representing the same old trace evidence and blurry images of Sasquatch. So we're going to get something better one day. We're going to do our best to do that anyway.
But do you think, Kerry, that, we do have the PG film, which I would say it's probably 60-40, but maybe I'm off on the numbers as far as those who believe it's real and those who don't. But do you think that a really good video would be sufficient to prove these things exist?
No, you're going to have to put one on a slab to prove it. What I think a good video will do is convince more people that they are actually out there. And we're going to try this, actually. We've put together 18 people for an expedition to Florida, down there where Zasky and Melanie go hunting. We're actually leaving here pretty soon. But I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I make films. So I'm going to film this thing for 168 hours straight for 1 week from multiple angles. We've got about $50,000 worth of filming equipment in it right now. And I've got just a very select group of people, not a lot of researchers, but a lot of devoted career professionals that are truth seekers, that are devoted. They're putting themselves to the hazard to do this, to go in to the places where these creatures, where we know they are. It's just a matter of someone having the nerve and making the proper sacrifice to go in and get good, clear footage of one moving. We can get them peeking through the bushes at us all day. But to catch them moving on thermal, we have a thermal drone. We've got just a ton of equipment. But we're going to go down there and give it our shot, and I'm going to film it. It's going to be called 168 Hours, and I'm going to put it out in 7 parts. It's going to be a 7-part docuseries. Each day will be a part, and hopefully we'll get something good. If not, at least I hope it's a good story to tell of these people trying to get this. To me, whether we succeed or fail, it's going to show people just how hard it is to get good evidence, what you've got to go through. Because most researchers go out and they're holding their camera in their hand. They're not really recording. They see something, hear something, then they hit record. So they just maybe catch the tail end of something or a glimpse of something in the woods. That's not what we're doing. We're going to have groups out 24/7. One group comes in, the next group goes out. And we're going to have cameramen, myself included, filming them out in the bush doing this. So we're going to have cameras running at camp and in the field. And what you're going to see is an hour count in the corner of the screen, and then whatever action we get. And then you're going to get interviews from these people as they come in. As soon as they come in, they're going to sit down and talk about what they experienced, because it's fresh on them. They're not having to think back, weeks or months to tell what happened. If they catch good footage, they'll talk about how they got it, and we're going to show everything, and it's going to be 100% free of charge right there on our channel. So it's going to be a while before I get it edited and put together, just because of the amount of footage that I'm going to have to go through. But we're going to make this film, and hopefully we'll get something better. I just want to convince more people that they're out there, and to me, that's the best way to do it. Just showing a picture doesn't do it. You've got to tell the story. You've got to make people get emotionally connected to what you're doing, and get emotionally connected to these people, either rooting for them or rooting against them, one way or the other. That's an emotional connection. But if they get good evidence, and the truth always stands the test of time. So I got good people with good reputations that what they do after the film how they carry themselves is what's going to lend validity to what we've done. So I'm going to show everyone who these people are, what they've gone through to do this. And if they happen to get good footage, because we're going to a place where we know they are, you guys are going to see it, and people will be able to latch on to it and say, yeah, okay, now I believe this.
Besides the anxiety of the multitude of things that can and will go wrong on a film shoot, from audio, video, scheduling, all the things that we've been through on an STM shoot that come up that you have to overcome. Does all that aside, because that's going to be there, what about the anxiety that stems from your sighting, from your trauma? As the days count down that you're going out to these woods, do you dread having to do that?
Yeah. I don't want to do this. No way. But I've been thinking about it for so long, what I thought it would take to get something better. And then this place, you've seen Mark and Melanie's Asties, what they get.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's in there. I've got some new stuff that I'll send you when we get off here. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. This is where we're going. And yeah, of course, but we have the means, we have the ability, and we have the opportunity. And someone has to do this. No one else is doing it. Not this way, where I think that you have to be continuously filming constantly for an entire week to get just little tidbits here and there, to actually capture these things and not just have a story to tell, but have something to show or listen to, footprints and whatever else we find when we're down there. I've been out and shot 13 of these films, not this long. We usually shoot for a couple of days and we'll put it together. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours long. And that's it. And it's the story of what, these people have gone through, but this is going to be in real time, what you're seeing, what's happening with it. So it's going to be a little bit different in that respect. But the anxiety for me is absolutely there. It's already there. We're really close on, just on the edge of going. I think it's actually visible to a lot of our viewers who have been listening to us for the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it's there. But I'm gonna power through it and do it. The first place woods I went back in were Florida woods, so it wasn't quite as bad, even though it was still there, kind of claustrophobic feeling. But I've got a specific focus now, and it's not to look for Bigfoot, it's to film these people doing what they're doing.
All right.
So that's gonna be my whole saving grace for the whole thing is that each day will be a part, and that's not going to be just one film condensed into, take all of it and condense it into 2 hours. It's going to be 2.5 hours per episode. So essentially going to be about 18 to 20 hours long. So I get to break down each day at a time instead of trying to go through the whole thing and put all the best stuff together into one.
Well, I'm pulling
very
for
ambitious
you.
and a logistical nightmare.
I was just going to say that the editing, God bless you for even raising your hand and going, I'm going to film it and edit this. And sometimes that's the way it has to be. But video editing is a completely different animal than audio editing. So goodness gracious me, that's a lot of footage. But I'm excited about that. And I really hope that you guys get what you want. All right, last question, I promise, Kerry.
I'm okay.
Say you were a hiker out on that property. I don't know why. You're just a hiker. You didn't have a gun. You're not out there hunting. Say you had a badass camera, like a beautiful camera. Would you have even thought to take a picture of that thing?
I don't know. I had a Motorola Razor in my pocket at the time and didn't think to take it out. If I had a badass camera on me and that's what I was there to do, I think I might have, actually.
Well, if that's what you were there to do, yes. But, because you weren't expecting that, of course. So no. Like Ken Gerhardt's, the cover of his book, Sam Shearon did that, the art for The Essential Guide to Bigfoot.
I've got his book.
Yeah. That's exactly, I think, what would happen. You got the guy slack-jawed standing there looking at this Bigfoot, and his camera is actually, the strap of it is under the foot of the Bigfoot, and I don't think that this gentleman is even thinking about, where is my camera? I need to get this shot. I just think that like you're looking at a monster and you're going, this is real?
Sure. That's exactly right. That's exactly the feeling. And I know it sounds like it lasted a long time, but the whole thing from the time I first saw it till I couldn't see it anymore walking away was less than a minute. He was probably standing at that tree for 20 seconds, maybe 15, 20 seconds. So long enough, definitely. But it wasn't like a 4 or 5 minute ordeal.
Probably felt like it. Probably felt like an hour, 2 hours, an eternity.
It felt like a long time.
Even that strange look that he gave you. I saw exactly what he did because you're really good at explaining your story. Him looking down, kind of his shoulder and his arm at you, like cocking his head like a dog.
Yeah, almost upside down. Almost like he's just got his head turned completely. Well, his head's sitting down in front of his shoulders anyway.
Right.
So I think maybe turning his head wasn't really as comfortable a move as just cocking his head to the side and just looking right across his shoulder at me and walking away. It was, and I could really, really see the length of his face, and I see it right now at that apex head. It was the boogeyman, absolutely.
Would have been a lot cooler if it was actually Scottie Pippen and not a monster,
Yeah, you got that right.
Well, Kerry, thank you so much for coming on with me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Shannon. I appreciate it.